in a mature EA practice, tools are chosen not for their sophistication, but for how well they support learning, alignment, and purposeful change. It enables architects to link architecture directly to business outcomes and to prioritize initiatives based on value and impact rather than just technical convenience. Most people still think of enterprise architecture as something that belongs to the IT department. The goal is obviously not to draw perfect models and diagrams, but to create this shared understanding. Focusing on impact can open new avenues that weren't visible when you were solely focused on execution.
I love the statement you mentioned that enterprise architecture is about influence, not control. Welcome back to the EA Explained. Over the course of this series, we have talked about what really enterprise architecture is, how it works in practice, and how it supports real decision-making process inside organizations. We have talked about frameworks, domains, trade-offs, and even EA execution. We have grounded EA in business context. So for this final episode, I don't want to introduce another model or method. I just want to focus on what comes after the basics, what it actually means to grow as an architect, and how practitioners can move from doing architecture to shaping real change inside their organizations. Eric, this feels like end the EA Explain series by looking forward.
Yeah, absolutely. Luckily for us, as this series comes to an end, for us at least, we end it by talking about continuing the EA journey. So that's a nice situation. Let's hope that the final episode will be just as meaningful as all the others that we did.
I hope so. And let's just dive in. And I would like to discuss with you one of the topics that most architects are facing today. As you know, we often talk about learning enterprise architecture by mastering frameworks, artifacts, and deliverables. From your experience, what does it really mean to go beyond the basics in the enterprise architecture?
Let me start by saying that most people still think of enterprise architecture as something that belongs to the IT department, that it's the IT's department's responsibility, right? So consequently, they tend to view enterprise architecture through that particular lens. And I think that stepping out and going beyond the basics of enterprise architecture means broadening your horizons to the organizational level. So it's actually, I believe it's time to stop being confined to the safe walls of the IT department. Going beyond these basics of enterprise architecture means shifting from a descriptive activity to a more strategic one. So at the most basic level, EA often focuses on documenting systems, standards, current state landscapes, etc. But beyond that, architecture shapes decisions about where the organization is going and how it will actually get there. So the emphasis, I believe, shifts from what we have to what should we do next and also why. And I think that at this more mature level, enterprise architecture is closely linked to business strategy and business outcomes. Now, rather than working in isolation or reacting to projects after decisions have been made, architects now collaborate with other departments and help frame the options, help clarify trade-offs, and explain the long-term implications of the short-term choices. So it becomes a bridge between strategic intent and execution, ensuring that investments in technology and change support business goals such as the growth, efficiency, resilience, and even customer experience, focusing on change over time rather than these static snapshots is actually another aspect of going beyond the basics. So rather than producing diagrams that quite often quickly become outdated, advanced enterprise architecture focuses on the roadmaps, the transition states, the decision principles. So the value lies in guiding evolution by answering questions such as what to modernize first, or what to simplify, or even what to retire, which capabilities need strengthening, etc. So architecture becomes this tool for managing complexity and directing transformation. And another key aspect is cultural and organizational impact. So mature enterprise architecture influences how people think and collaborate across silos because it establishes a common language. And I mentioned this before in earlier episodes. This common language among business leaders, among product teams and technologies, facilitating the alignment of priorities and reducing friction. Rather than enforcing rules, architects promote understanding and coherence, enabling the teams to make better decisions that benefit the organization as a whole. So ultimately, going beyond the basics establishes enterprise architecture's place at the leadership table. So it is valued not for the artifacts it produces, but for the clarity that it brings, or the risks it helps avoid, and the strategic options that it reveals. So EA becomes less about diagrams and frameworks and more about enabling sustained, intentional change in a complex organization.
I like that, Eric, and I like how you framed it. And if I can summarize it in somehow, I think, and from my experience as well, at some point, EA should stop being about knowing what to produce and starts being about understanding why and when architecture should be used to the business and the strategic intent within the organization. Do you think this is a correct summary?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And I think that the focus should be on providing clarity throughout the organization, throughout the change the organization is going through, and not focused solely on producing static artifacts, etc. That's not where the value of enterprise architecture lies. It's in the organization being in motion and being able to move with the organization towards wherever the strategy leads it.
And that will bring us to one of the points that we would like to discuss in today's episode, Eric. Of course, every one of us has seen that architect who is technically very strong but still struggle to influence decisions. From your experience, how can architects deepen their impact beyond producing models and roadmaps or artifacts like we discussed?
I think that architects can deepen their influence by shifting their, primary focus would be a good word, from creating artifacts to shaping conversations and decisions. So while these diagrams and models are useful, they only matter if they change how people think or act. So architects' influence grows when they consistently show up where important choices are being made and when they help leaders understand the consequences of different options in clear and non-technical terms. So when executives associate architecture with clarity rather than constraint, architects become trusted advisors instead of reviewers. And another way that architects can grow their influence is, through deep business literacy. So architects who understand an organization's strategy or its financial drivers or its regulatory pressures and customer realities, those architects can connect technical decisions directly to business outcomes. So when an architect can explain how a platform choice affects, let's say, time to market or risk exposure or even the operating costs, their input carries far more weight naturally. And this business fluency enables architects to frame their guidance as a means of enabling success rather than as abstract standards. So influence expands through relationships and credibility built over time. Architects who collaborate closely with product managers, with delivery teams and operations staff, they gain insight into real constraints and earn trust by taking this more pragmatic approach, like what my book is all about. So by helping teams succeed rather than hindering them, architects are actually seen as allies. And this trust makes people more likely to seek architectural input early on, like before decisions are finalized, which is, of course, when the architecture has the greatest impact. So architects deepen their influence by acting as stewards of long-term thinking. While delivery teams rightly focus, of course, on short-term outcomes, architects focus on sustainability, coherence, the cumulative impact. And by consistently highlighting the patterns, the risks, the opportunities that emerge across initiatives, architects help organizations avoid local optimization and short-term fixes that create long-term problems. So over time, this steady perspective builds, confidence that architectural guidance protects the organization's future and not just its present.
I love that, Eric, and I would like to build on that because it's all about the mindset. I loved how you mentioned that it's not about artifacts, it's about being involved in solving real business problems and all the stakeholder communication and so on and so forth. But this will bring us to the mindset part. From a practitioner perspective, what mindset shifts are needed to move from being a strong practitioner in my domain or in the enterprise architecture technicality parts to being a strategic change enabler, like you mentioned?
I think the evolution, if you will, from practitioner to strategic change agent begins with shifting the focus from ownership of solutions to ownership of outcomes. Practitioners often measure their own success based on the quality of what they produce, be it designs, analysis, or decisions. And strategic change agents, on the other hand, measure success by the changes that occur in the organization as a result of their influence. So this requires letting go of the need to control the details and focusing instead on whether the right behaviors, the decisions and directions are taking hold. Another, I think, important shift is moving from problem solving to sense making. So practitioners are usually valued for answering questions and for fixing issues. Strategic change agents, on the other hand, spend more time framing the right questions, revealing patterns, and helping others understand the complexity. So rather than rushing to solutions, they actually slow down conversations just enough to surface assumptions, to clarify the trade-offs, to align perspectives. So I think their value lies in helping the organization see itself more clearly. And then there is also a shift from expert authority to relational influence. So as a practitioner, credibility often stems from extensive technical knowledge. However, as this change agent, credibility stems from trust, from empathy, and the ability to collaborate across boundaries. And this requires active listening, adapting messages for different audiences, recognizing that change can be emotional, political, and rational. So influence can grow through relationships and not just titles. And strategic change agents also adopt a longer time horizon. The practitioners are often rewarded for delivering within the scope of a project or initiative. And I think that change agents think in terms of trajectories and momentum. So they understand that meaningful change unfolds over years and through many of small decisions. So they pay attention to what is being reinforced culturally and structurally, not just what is being delivered. And there is this shift in mindset from certainty to learning. The practitioners are often expected to have answers, and the change agents are comfortable with the ambiguity and treat change as an ongoing experiment. Maybe experiment is not the correct word, but they test ideas, they observe the outcomes and adjust the course as the organization is learning. And this openness really fosters collaboration and resilience and positions individuals not as the smartest people in the room, but as those who help the room become smarter over time.
Yeah, I love that, Eric, because most of the practitioners should think that to advance or to be beyond the basics or beyond being a normal enterprise architect, you should become more aware about relevance, providing clarity and helping others see trade-offs, like you mentioned, helping others to be more smarter. I'm not the smartest guy in the room, but all we have to do that together. And this will bring us to the next point. As you know, tools are very powerful to use, especially nowadays with the rise of AI-powered tools. From your experience, what types of tools should practitioners explore to support their EA practice in the context that we discussed today, beyond the basics?
Yeah, I think that to effectively support this enterprise architecture practice, I think that practitioners should look at tools or think of tools as enablers of insight, enablers of communication and decision-making, rather than as just repositories of diagrams. So I think the most valuable tools help architects understand complexity and help them to engage stakeholders, help them to guide change over time. This means looking beyond traditional EA modeling software and building a more balanced tool set. So one important category is tools that support sense-making and visualization. And so this includes, of course, modeling and diagramming tools, but the emphasis should be on the flexibility and the clarity rather than exhaustive notation. Tools that allow architects to quickly sketch and adapt and to tailor views for different audiences are often more useful than highly rigid, framework-driven platform. The goal is obviously not to draw perfect models and diagrams, but to create this shared understanding. So tools that make it easy to tell a coherent story visually are especially powerful. And I think another key set of tools was collaboration and knowledge sharing. So enterprise architecture lives across organizational boundaries. So practitioners benefit or could benefit from tools that enable dialogue, feedback, and even co-creation. And this can include collaborative whiteboarding platforms, shared documentation spaces, even lightweight repositories where architectural guidance, principles, and decisions are easy to find and update. So when architecture knowledge is accessible and a living thing, it's far more likely to influence everyday decisions. So I think practitioners should explore tools that also connect architecture to planning and execution. Like portfolio management, road mapping, dependency map tools, and whatnot. These tools make it possible to show how architectural choices affect priorities, risk, which is critical for engaging leaders and shaping decisions at the organizational level. And maybe to end my answer to your question, it's important also not to overlook personal and cognitive tools. So techniques for facilitation, for storytelling, for systems thinking, scenario analysis are just as important as software. So whether supported by templates, canvases, or simple note-taking tools, these approaches help architects to think more clearly and engage others more effectively. So in a mature EA practice, tools are chosen not for their sophistication, but for how well they support learning, alignment, and purposeful change.
That's an important framing, to be honest, Eric, and you always mention that a lot. The value is not in the platform itself, but in how it helps architects connect, I would say, ideas and outcomes together for the better future, of course, for the organization. And by mentioning that, from your experience, are there specific platforms or vendors you believe are enabling more practical, decision-oriented enterprise architecture today?
I think that many enterprise architectural teams look to specific platforms and vendors as leaders in enabling this practical, strategic enterprise architecture rather than purely academic modeling. Ultimately, though, it depends on, I think, personal preference as to what is good, when is something good. So the field consists of traditional modeling vendors, modern cloud-first companies, enterprise software suites that incorporate enterprise architecture capabilities into this broader governance and transformation workflows. Several vendors are widely recognized in market analysis and industry reports for their robust EA tools. For instance, long-established players include BizDesign, which is known for its comprehensive platform, supports business to IT alignment, strategic planning, visualization based on open standards such as Archimate. But then there are modern cloud native specialists who are also shaping how enterprise architecture is practiced. For example, LeanIX is often highlighted for its lean and collaborative approach, as well as its strong focus on application portfolio management, technology risk visibility. Then there is RDoc, emphasizing data-driven, graph-based architecture repository, which is known for its rapid visualization reporting functionality. And maybe to end the list, Evolution is notable for its analytical and simulation capabilities, which can help model the impact of certain architectural decisions. But when choosing any of these tools, you should consider not only vendor reputation, but also how well the platform integrates with existing data sources, how it supports collaboration and decision-making, how it tracks the changes made over time, and how it enables enterprise architecture to influence strategy and execution across the organization.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. This is a very important part, and thank you so much for sharing the list. And now I would like to shift the gear a little bit to the architect or the practitioner perspective. For any architect who want to keep growing, which advanced areas do you think are worth exploring and adapting into their EA practice?
I think if you're looking to evolve beyond the foundational work, I think one key area to explore is capability-based planning. So rather than focusing solely on systems and technology, which this approach then centers on the organization's abilities, what it needs to do to succeed. and it aligns investments, processes, technology with those capabilities. So this enables architects to link architecture directly to business outcomes and to prioritize initiatives based on value and impact rather than just technical convenience. I think that's one important aspect. Another advanced area is this business technology integration through value streams and customer journeys. So it's all more like bending towards this business architecture perspective. So practitioners who understand and model how value flows to customers can better align IT, operations, and business processes. And this then ensures that architecture decisions accelerate outcomes rather than that they are merely optimizing internal systems. And this also ties into outcome-oriented metrics in which architecture is measured not by adherence to standards or model completeness, but by its effect on agility, cost efficiency, risk reduction, and again, this customer experience. Now, I think that enterprise architecture analytics is also an increasingly important field because by leveraging data on system usage, technical debt, one of these terms we hear often, dependencies, costs, etc. Architects can provide evidence-based guidance instead of relying on just an opinion. So tools and techniques for analyzing patterns, modeling the what-if scenarios, and simulating the impact of changes give practitioners a stronger voice in prioritizing and investment decisions. I think these tools and techniques also include exploring AI, like you mentioned, and machine learning to identify hidden dependencies or to optimize portfolios or even to predict risks. And this moves enterprise architecture from a descriptive role to a predictive and prescriptive role. And finally, I think organizational influence and change leadership distinguish effective enterprise architecture from purely technical architecture. So practitioners should really develop skills in storytelling, facilitation, and cross-functional collaboration. They must guide decisions rather than merely document them. Cultivate a mindset of enabling change rather than enforcing compliance. So this includes techniques for scenario planning, portfolio impact assessment, stakeholder engagement, and all these techniques help enterprise architecture shape the long-term outcomes across the organization.
I love the list, Eric. It all has a lot of advanced capabilities that all practitioners should include nowadays. And I would emphasize on storytelling. Storytelling is a very powerful skill that I think even with the current setup of the EA, whether it's an IT department or whatever, storytelling is something mandatory for all practitioners to understand because stakeholders differ from one to another. And nowadays, everything around us is changing very fast, and making sure that I'm telling the story in the correct context is crucial. Do you think this is correct, what I'm saying?
Yeah, absolutely. It's like I mentioned before, you could phrase it like storytelling, but it's actually helping the organization move forward towards realizing the goals they have set. And by guiding them, by providing them with clarity with regard to the decisions that they need to make, this storytelling, helping them on their journey, really helps to guide them towards where they want to go. So it's a very important skill, and it actually goes way beyond the traditional aspects of enterprise architecture of documenting the state of the organization as it is today. It's actually looking forward and helping the organization move forward.
Absolutely. And I would like you to look back a little bit and share with us one belief or practice that has consistently helped you grow as an architect and a consultant at the same time.
That's a good question. I think that one belief that has made the biggest difference, perhaps, had the biggest impact, is that architecture is about influence and not so much about control. So I think that early in one's career, it's easy to measure the success by the number of diagrams produced, right? Or the way that frameworks are enforced, or even how many standards are implemented. But I think that over time, you realize that the work that truly shapes outcomes comes from guiding people's thinking and helping the organization make better decisions, not from insisting on perfect models or rigid compliance. So in practice, this belief manifests as a habit of first listening, asking questions that reveal underlying assumptions, and then translating complexity into a language that actually resonates with business leaders. And that's what I meant by storytelling. So it also means being comfortable with ambiguity, acknowledging that no model and no roadmap is ever perfect, and focusing on helping teams clearly see trade-offs, risks, and opportunities. So by approaching, I think, each interaction as an opportunity to influence understanding and action rather than just checking a box, architects gradually build credibility, trust, and even impact. And another related practice is connecting technology decisions back to value. So every architectural recommendation, whether retiring a system, adopting a new platform, or even rethinking a process, is framed in terms of outcomes, cost efficiency, speed to market, whatever. So when stakeholders see that architecture is about enabling success rather than about rules, they become collaborators rather than resistors. I think combining an influence-focused mindset with outcome-driven framing has helped me transition from being the diagram person to being the trusted advisor who shapes strategy and change.
I love the statement you mentioned that enterprise architecture is about influence, not control. And this will bring us to the next point for all the architects out there, mid-career architects who feel stuck or unsure of their direction. What advice would you provide to them?
First step would be shifting from thinking about roles and titles to thinking about impact and influence. Feeling stagnant often stems from measuring progress based on what you produce, such as these diagrams or reports or compliance with frameworks, rather than the outcomes that your work enables. So I think taking a step back and asking yourself, in what ways could I help the organization make better decisions or accelerate change? Focusing on impact can open new avenues that weren't visible when you were solely focused on execution. Another important step is to expand your perspective beyond technology. So many architects plateau because they remain deeply embedded in systems or platforms without engaging with business strategy or financial drivers or customer outcomes.
Yes, exactly.
So I suggest investing time in understanding the enterprise holistically, including its capabilities, its value streams, the market pressures, organizational culture. So when you speak the language of business leaders and demonstrate how architecture creates tangible value, that is when your work becomes more relevant and your role naturally broadens. So also don't underestimate the value, I believe, of mentorship and peer networks. So seek
Absolutely.
mentors inside and also outside of your organization who navigated these plateaus that I just touched upon, and learning how they positioned themselves as trusted advisors and moved into these strategic roles that can actually provide clarity and actionable pathways for you. Also, engaging with other mid-career architects can introduce you to emerging practices, tools, and even mindsets that can reignite your sense of purpose. So feeling stuck often, I think, reflects a mismatch between your daily work and the level of impact that you want to have. Transitioning to influence, to strategic thinking and outcome-focused practices can transform the plateau into a period of growth and actually new opportunities.
Yeah, thanks so much, Eric, for sharing that. And one more final message for someone starting their enterprise architecture career. What's your final message to them?
If you're starting a career in enterprise architecture, I would like to say, focus on understanding the organization as a whole, not just the technology. And I've said this many times before. Aim to be a bridge, not a gatekeeper. Early on, it is tempting to measure success by models, by diagrams, by frameworks, technical precision. However, the true value of enterprise architecture comes from helping the organization make better decisions, navigate the complexity to achieve its goals. So invest time in learning how the business works, what creates value, and how change occurs. Be curious about strategy and its execution. Learn to speak the language of these business leaders and the delivery teams. And always connect your recommendations to meaningful outcomes. So build trust and relationships before worrying about producing these perfect diagrams. Influence grows and flows through credibility and understanding, not through artifacts.
Yeah.
So embrace this mindset of continuous learning and adaptability. The technologies, the structures, and the markets you work with will change faster than any framework or tool. So focus on developing skills that will make you indispensable in ambiguous situations, such as critical thinking, storytelling, facilitation, the ability to see patterns across people, processes, and systems. So begin with curiosity and a willingness to experiment. And over time, I'm sure that you will grow into this role where your work will shape not just IT, but also the direction and the resilience of the entire organization. And please note that enterprise architecture is a career where patience, perspective, and influence matter far more than titles or tools. Mastering these elements early on establishes a foundation for a lifetime of meaningful impact.
That's a very powerful message to end with, Eric. And if I would summarize that, I would say enterprise architecture is a long journey, like you mentioned. From what I have seen, at least personally, if you stay focused on helping organizations make better decisions, architecture will always have a role to play within the organization. Any final thoughts?
I think this nicely ends our 10th episode.
Yeah, exactly. And as you mentioned, that brings us to the end of the EE Explained video series, the 10th episode of the EE Explained video series by the Analyst Architect. This series was all about helping practitioners see what enterprise architecture looks like when it's grounded in reality. Eric, I would like to thank you so much, not just for this episode, but for your commitment, ownership, flexibility, along with clarity and honesty you brought to the entire series. It was really my pleasure working with you on that initiative.
Yeah, well, it goes both ways. The same goes for me. I really enjoyed creating this video podcast series with you. And I also hope that the audience enjoyed them as well. And of course, I look forward to you continuing your journey with delivering insightful podcast series. Thank you, Omar.
Thank you, Eric, for your time. And to everyone watching, this isn't the end of the journey. It's just the point where you start shaping it yourself in your own career. Thank you all for your engagements, insights, and feedback you provided us with in the previous period across the EE Explained video series. It really helped us to enhance this content. Thank you for being part of the EE Explained. See you in the next series.